Hello everybody, this is Dr. Christopher White and welcome back to part 4 of Deformation, and this is going to be a particularly quick video, so let's get this done. Alright, so as you can see here we have ourselves a situation where we have a very low resolution anticline. Now we can see it's an anticline, we can see it on the section here, can't we? We can see it's coming up and over, forming an arch shape, so we know it's an anticline. And once again, just like we saw in the index fossil presentation, we can see here we go, we have a C with a horizontal line through it, so we know that's Cambrian. So this is a Cambrian age rock. O for Ordovician, S for Silurian, D for Devonian, M for Mississippian, P with a vertical line, Pennsylvanian, P on its own, Permian, and then we have Triassic here. So we have a pretty substantial sequence of rocks. So what would we see as geologists? Well, once again, imagine this section here, this face wasn't there, this face wasn't there, all we had was the rocks on the top. Well, what would we see? Well, as a geologist, I would see very quickly, I had, right, here's my brown layer of rock, and there's the same brown layer of rock here. Here's this yellow gold layer of rock there, yellow gold layer of rock here, and then we'll have a grey layer of rock in the middle. So I have myself repeating layers. Instantly, I'm going to think, right, possible anticline, possible syncline. Okay, so then I'm going to look for dip directions, dip information. Okay, so this layer of rock here, as we can see, 30 degrees off to the west. So I know this layer of rock here is dipping 30 degrees this way. I come over here, this layer of rock here is dipping 70 degrees this way, off to the right. So I can very quickly work out that I have a layer of rock that's coming up here at 30 degrees, and then it's dipping down very quickly 70 degrees that way. So I have myself an asymmetrical anticline. It takes just a few seconds, doesn't it, to work out what you've got. So not that difficult at all. As long as you have the dip and strike symbols, and you can work out essentially, you know, that you have these repeating patterns, and so you can spot the fact that the repeating patterns are there, and so that gives the indication you may have an anticline or syncline. The rest is easy. Now here we have a very realistic situation. Okay, this one is a slightly more complex beast. Okay, so if we look at it in a section, you can see exactly what's going on, can't you? You can quite clearly see we have an anticline. That's not really a huge shock. Now, in the real world, what tends to happen is the dips aren't always the same. So, you know, this layer, this layer, this layer, this, they'll all have slightly different dips. Okay, so don't be scared, don't be shocked if you see these different dips. Okay, the other thing is the reason they're different is because we're looking at different parts of the fold. So if you imagine this kind of peach-colored layer here would come all the way up like that and all the way up back down, wouldn't it? So the bit of the peach fold I'm looking at here is equivalent to this part of the fold of the orange fold. So it's the steepest bit. Okay. As the rocks get steadily younger, I'm coming essentially up the fold, aren't I? So when I'm looking at this kind of this green layer here, I'm towards the top of the fold, so the dip is actually getting quite shallow. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So what I'm looking at here is essentially the further out I go, I'm actually looking I'm getting further and further away from the hinge of the fold. So the dip is getting steeper and steeper. So what else do I have? Well, you'll notice there's this symbol here, which is a circle with a cross in the middle. And that's the symbol for horizontal bedding. So that means the bedding is like that. And that's because if you think about it, as you come up, your arch is coming up, coming up, coming up, coming up. There's going to be that moment right here where the rocks are going to be horizontal. Just going to stop it. I've got to stop hitting the microphone. So the rocks are going to be horizontal right here. And so there's a symbol to show that, and it's a circle with a cross in it, and that's the horizontal bedding symbol. So what we have here is we have a nice realistic description of an anticline, and it shows you that these symbols do not always stay the same. Okay, not always the same number. Now it's also nice and realistic because they've even gone and included this feature here. You can see we have a vertical feature that's punching its way through the sequence, and we can see that it's vertical. Okay, well, number one, principle of cross-cutting relationships. It cross-cuts this layer, and this layer, therefore it must be younger than them. And we can see it's a near vertical feature, so obviously it's going to be a dike of some variety. And we can see that this dike has a dip of 80 degrees to the west. And so we can see it dips 80 degrees towards the left-hand side of our diagram, which is the west. And so this is a very nice example of a realistic fold. Okay, so don't forget, the dips will not always be the same on the limb. And obviously when you're at the approximate position of the axis, in some instances the bedding will be horizontal. So the final diagram here is just a quick folding review, just to make sure we are, just to make sure we remember our 4 different types of fold. We have symmetrical folds, where the limbs are the same length and the same angle, so the fold is symmetrical. We have an asymmetrical fold. The fold's limbs are different lengths and different angles. We have an overturned fold, or an overfold, where essentially one of the limbs is vertical. And of course then we have a recumbent fold, which is when the fold is completely on its side. Then we have our 3 types of fold. We have anticlines, synclines, and monoclines. Okay, and in the case of an anticline, oldest rocks in the middle, youngest rocks on the outside. In the case of a syncline, youngest rocks on the inside, oldest rocks on the outside. Alright, good. So that's it for part 4. So once again, don't forget to write down that code word. It was in part 2, I believe. So if you missed it, go back and make sure you write it down. And that's it, everyone. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the lecture.